Today, we are very pleased to have a very busy man, Al Wilson. If you're a football tabletop gamer, you know this man already. His fast drive football is generating a feeding frenzy. It's not just passing interest. Um, his Facebook group, Fast Drive Football, already has 150 members. The game has been launched about a week, and people are already customizing charts for allocating touchdowns. Numerous seasons are already available. It is essentially a drive-by-drive football game, as the name implies. Mr. Al Wilson, thank you. You're being besieged with interest, comments, people begging for seasons. I believe you just had a poll that you're going to, you've concluded that the 85 and 98 seasons are next. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Very happy to be here. This is my first interview as a game publisher, so this is a big deal.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We don't want to hold you up because your fans are going to be, I tell you, I said on one comment that you are so responsive, which is amazing and very important for folks so interested in the game. It's like being back in my old newsrooms where I'm watching The Wire and things are developing like this and this. Could you just kind of give us the elevator pitch for the game, what its goal is, if you will, and kind of the origin story? I believe it's kind of affiliated with the play or derived from the play game engine.
It is, yeah. So there's a lot of directions I could go with that. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. I'm mostly a big two sports fan, baseball and football. That's how it's been most of my life. But I enjoy all the other sports as well. And as a kid, played mostly like C-action football and the old O.J. Simpson one with the records. So I was always into that more tactile kind of experience. I didn't really know about cards and dice until friends showed me Strat maybe when I was like 12 years old. I got into Status Pro instead, but never any football games because when I looked at the boxes, when I looked at them in the stores, it didn't look like something I could play solitaire, and that's what I was into. So I stuck with baseball for cards and dice, stuck with the more gamey games for football. Fast forward, and I stopped playing board games, got into computer games, got really invested in like out of the park baseball and PC replay. Developed a good relationship with the PC replay folks. That led me to get involved with second and 10 football on the PC as well. So really invested in that for many years. And then it just went cold for me. The PC experience went cold for me. I kind of dropped out of the PC scene, and around about that time, around 2012, hooked up with Keith through Red, White, and Blue Racing. And we formed a fast friendship. And at the time he said, "Hey, do you want to see a new baseball game I'm working on?" I said, "Of course." And I remember where I was sitting when I opened up that package and saw the progression system and quality, something I'd never seen before. And I think in the back of my head, as soon as I saw that, I never said it out loud, but, "Oh, this would be great for football." But of course, didn't want to be that bold and say to Keith, "Oh, you should do this with a football game," because they already had second season. So, as I've said in videos, Keith and I have become best friends over the years. And in 2017, I actually started working on a prototype of this game. I was just looking it up this morning to see when did I actually put something together. It was mid-2017. It didn't look like it does now, but it used qualities. And I was borrowing that idea from Keith. And again, you asked the question, and I need to put in the answer. I developed this because it was a game I wanted to play. And I understood early was Keith's secret. He didn't create games for people. He created games that he thought were fun. So I wanted to create a game that I wanted to play that I would think was fun. And it was complicated. It had multiple charts. It basically, it was grounded on the field position idea. This was something that I've always paid attention to when I watch football. I pay attention to the nuance. Just like people don't like spending 3 or 4 hours with a baseball game today, I enjoy it because I enjoy the situation of each pitch count. Just like in football, I can watch any two teams play because I enjoy paying attention to who's controlling the clock, who's controlling field position. I think that's a really fun aspect of the game. And the original design was built on a very simple analysis that I found on a blog somewhere that showed the statistical breakdown between drives ending in a field goal or a touchdown based on the yard line from which they started. And I simplified that to poor average good or poor average great, and I was sort of off and running. 2 years later, fast forward, Keith was, I think I'm going to go ahead and be bold. I think Keith was inspired that I was trying to make a quicker playing football game. He bested me though and came out with Second Season Express. And I'll be honest with you, I dropped all development of this game in 2019 because it's like, all right, I can't do better than that. It leverages Second Season. People already have invested all this money and time into their game, to the seasons. It's brilliant. And I played that and promoted that for a couple of years. And it was I think during COVID, I was bored and looked at my old materials again, played it, and it just wasn't fun. And I almost lost interest. And then I again remember where I was when I realized that I had these multiple charts, all this rolling you do if you're in poor field position. And then if you have a good start to your drive, you flip to the next chart for you've moved to average field position. So you roll again. And then you've moved to great field position and you roll again. And it just wasn't fun. And then it hit me. It's like, oh my gosh, that's what Keith's 3-column progression system does. It takes you from beginning to end. Just like in baseball, you've got pitcher, batter, fielder. And in golf, you've got your woods, your irons, and your short irons. And it worked. And so I told Keith, I said, I think this works now, but it's totally a play game. It uses your qualities. It uses your progression system. What do you think? And he's like, well, that's cool, but I've already got Second Season Express. So, what do you think? And I said, well, if it doesn't fit in your portfolio, and we noodled on it a bit, and we came up with this idea that it would be a great, he was happy that I had figured out kind of a cool game, and he wanted me to let me self-publish it and get the kudos for doing it. But at the same time, we agreed that it can't be sold because it's his intellectual property. And then, as some folks may or may not know, and this is public, so I can share it, Keith was diagnosed with prostate cancer a few months back. And again, I dropped it. I actually stopped doing anything related to gaming for about 2 months. It hit me pretty hard. But as things do, started, talk to Keith a lot more, started lifting each other's spirits, and decided that, I had figured out a few more mechanics that made the game fun. Got some good feedback from really generous play testers, and here we are. So that's kind of the genesis of how it all came to be.
Excellent. So much to unpack there, if you will. And first, of course, though, our thoughts are with Keith and the best wishes for him. I mean, I'm sure I speak for a lot of people there. I actually spoke with him a few years back, intending to interview him for our little page about 10 years ago. And as I recall, he was a kind of an APBA-ish fan. And, and just as you say, you see something and you think, well, should I, shouldn't I? And you have that bug, you have to do it, and somehow it will come out. Right now, again, back to that frenzy, Dave Gardner, Digital to Dice, is doing, I think, your 81 season, and he's trying to keep people kind of a little off your back to say, let the game not be so complex. But there are folks, just to read through your page here, Brian Martin is, I love to tweak things, and people are claiming for sets. Jason Graham, creator of Flash Sports, Flash Games, has said this is the game he wishes he had 30 years ago. He might not have even created his game. Again, going back to that should I, shouldn't I, he says, this is pretty much, he's crowned it king of his football tabletop. Steve Tower, after further review, is doing a season replay. One thing I love about your game, and this goes to, I think, creation for anything. I was just talking to someone, or commenting on a a war game site, Advanced Squad Leader, talking about character of soldiers, national character, in terms of football games, team character, player character. Your game is very much words. It's not charts. It's not numbers, right? It's drive results. It's desperation play, fumble, interception. I apologize. I did not download in color here. And I will say that this game is downloadable, printable, as Al mentioned. It's free. Season's free. There are boutique cards. I love the concept, but it's a numbers game. And it goes to team characters. Some of the concepts, for instance, for the boutique card, the characters are just general offenses and defenses are characterized. This is a 76 season. The Tampa Bay Bucks, the hapless Bucks, are dull, erratic, porous on offense, inept, meek, and undisciplined on defense. You actually joked you were going to put the hopeless moniker on the Tampa Bay Bucks card, and that 76 Bucks team, boy, just people love to play that. But I love the fact that you're getting the character of the game. What are some of the most enjoyable aspects? You talked about being able to watch two teams. What is it about pro football that really gets you in the gut and lets you want to just corral it and simulate it?
So I think we're all, I'm 52. We're all kind of in the same age group. The old NFL films, I'm looking at my bookshelf. Any NFL pro books that have the picture of the games from like the 50s and the 60s, the mud, but it's the color. So what grabbed me as a kid, and this is like way too personal, but I'm the kid with the NFL sheets on their bed as a kid. What grabbed me about football from a kid, and I remember it was a big deal going to the bus stop with my new Eagles hat. I grew up in Philadelphia. So it was a big deal to wear the colors. To me, and it was like a big disappointment when you open up the pack of Tops and the logos aren't on the helmet. So for me, it was about the color and the team identities, less than about, it's like amazing. When I watch Jason, by the way, huge shout out to Jason Graham, his passion for the game. It's like I get to see someone playing the game even in a more excited fashion than I do, which is insane. But his knowledge of the players and just being able to name a team and then envision who was lining up, that's beyond where I'm at. I'm more of, I've been watching these games. I follow the league. If I could wear any shirt, it would, like, I have an MLB shirt that just has the MLB logo. Same thing with the NFL. I'd love an NFL logo shirt because I'm just a fan of the league. I'm a fan of the action. I'm a fan of and I put this in the instructions. It's basically on any given Sunday. And something I was talking to my group of gaming friends about, the Saturday morning Zoom crew, as Keith has called us, is that initially I wanted this engine to produce a bit more variability. So again, the reason why I watch games on TV, the reason why I watch the sport is because I feel like I'm going to see something I haven't seen before every time I watch a football game. So in answer to your question, when you're playing this game, I want something to happen each time that hasn't happened the last time you rolled a game. And so we dubbed it the Chaos Engine. And to be honest with you, I did not want to put that in the marketing materials or in the game book because I had a feeling that APBA players, strat players, when they saw that, they're gonna be like, oh, no. I don't want anything that's like that off the wall. But what's cool is, and I think people are seeing it in the results now, about 80% of the time, you'll see scores that, yep, that's pretty much what happened. And then 20% of the time, whoa, it's like, okay, but that's the design intent. And that's what I want. That's what I wanted out of the game. And that's what I want people to get out of the game is the feeling that you want to roll one more game because it's just crazy enough that you want to see what happens next.
Excellent. Yeah, and Jason Graham's one of the best things to happen to tabletop football games ever. Second that strongly. As you mentioned, people want to roll that one more game. I saw a gentleman on your Facebook group was playing a game with his wife.
Yeah, that was cool.
It's quick to learn. And speaking of APBA and Strato, I remember in the 80s, of course, APBA came out with the master game, and they had the rare plays charts, more word stuff to add kind of that flavor. There, I guess, began to be a bit of repetition that the same rare plays would kind of come up. Yours has, I think, you've really captured a certain kind of dynamism in the game. Again, it's unusual results, drive results. And again, folks, this is downloadable. You have instructions how to print it, take it to your preferred print service supplier, and away you go. Looking at the $76, of course, people are playing. It's interesting, the character, we often wonder, what are the most replayed seasons? 58 seasons still, even with your game, it's right up front. 1960, the 72 Dolphins, which in our world, APBA world, Bill Lilly just got the Dolphins 17-0 right through to the Redskins, Super Bowl 7, and the $76. I did a $76 replay about 8 years ago because I heard someone do it 8 years before that. I think I got them to 1 win. I think you got yours Bucks to 3 wins.
To 3, yeah.
So, and I bring that up because you mentioned in the Facebook group that you might consider a fantasy module a la Grid Zone, Turf Wars, which Graham is also a fan of. And that got me thinking about, because I've been thinking recently, I was like, well, we're the manager, we're the coach, but you're never going to get in APBA terms, a C index, worst index team to the Super Bowl, a 0-14 team, no matter how you play it. I wonder if it is desirable that you create a game where a 0-14 team could get to a Super Bowl.
Well, not straight out of the box. Even I wouldn't want to play that, but with the addition of possibly a rolling franchise mode, that I think would be compelling. Start with the 0-14 Bucks and 76, and then let it. And it's like, I don't know if there's any science fiction fans out there, deviate from the timeline, Loki reference, and build your own dynasty. And again, shouting out to my gaming crew, they were like, they liked the game, but they're like, Al, this needs to be fictional. We want fictional, because they're really into Grid Zone. They're really into fictional gaming. And they're like, this would be a great engine for that. And so I'm thinking we can meet in the middle. We can still build that. But I like the idea of starting with a team that cannot make it based on just their lack of talent. They're not going to make it to the Super Bowl, but you can roll the dice, feel like you're in the GM seat, try to improve the team, make some moves, and then the 77 card for the Bucks, could hopefully, if you get some good rolls, will look better, and basically see how long it could be a fun meta game. See how long it takes someone to take the Bucks to the Super Bowl. And that would be the idea there. I never wanted this game to be that open up that door where if you're just strictly replaying a season that anybody could win the Super Bowl. I think it'll be interesting to see people play this game and take maybe contenders and take them to the Super Bowl. I think we've seen Jason have some upsets on his channel. I do want that. I do want, an 8-8 team to maybe make a run. Things like that. Absolutely. But 0-14, no.
Right. Sure. Makes sense. And speaking of those, you're trying to get a team over the hump where there were those close calls, a 10-14 that missed the playoffs, like the 75 Cardinals, I think it was, or 76, where they finished third in a very tough NFC East, or Steeler fan 95 season. Of course, I'm going to try to replay that Super Bowl, maybe without Neil O'Donnell. But so speaking of the game engine, can you walk me really quickly through how I've printed out my charts, got them professionally done, bound. How am I setting up and playing this game? It takes about 15 minutes a game.
It does. It's like I put on the instructions, it takes 20 because I try to be a little conservative, but quickly I realized that people got the rules really easily and we're rolling games in 15 minutes. It's a quick 1, 2, 3 step process. You roll the die once to see where the starting field position is going to be. 90% of the time it's going to be, 90% of the time you're going to have one roll, and or 80% of the time, and it'll be average field position. It's possible that you'll have a possibility of a return, long return, or a touchdown return, but that's one roll. Then you roll for the drive, make a note of the time on the second roll. You look at the red die. That's how long the drive takes. And that's really about it. You're looking at typically 2 rolls per drive. If you have a turnover, you just have to roll 1d6 one more time to see what happens on the turnover. and you write it on the score sheet, and you move on. It's literally that quick. What I added to it from a special teams perspective, field goals are not automatic. You've got to roll for field goals. Punts are not automatic. You've got to roll. There's different punting charts depending on where you are on the field, which will dictate the starting field position of the other team. It'll change the probability that they'll have poor, average, or great field position. And yeah, I mean, that's really about it. The extra rolls are few and far between, but they're meaningful when they happen. It's kind of the idea, is that if you're gonna make the game or do an extra roll, it better be important. And again, that's something that was not fun about the original version of the game. Like, quick insight, something that used to be in the game that I took out, and I'm really glad I did, was instead of there being a probability of a fumble, meaning the team absolutely does lose control of the ball, it was a fumble opportunity, meaning you have to roll again to see that, and it was a 50-50 roll. And it really made no sense from a gaming perspective. There's no fun in a 1-3, they fall on it, and a 4-6, they cough it up. So I took that out, had to redo the charts to take those opportunities out. But in the end, I think it was the right idea. Where the idea stuck was if there's a fumble on a kickoff. And that's where I left it in there, because there is a little added drama there that I think does work. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Interesting. So how much testing did you do? And you talked about, I think Dave Gardner was doing some 76 bucks work as well. And you said, it's great to see these seasons play out to help me test further. How many iterations did you go through ultimately?
There's been about, of the chart. So the two main charts, and I do have it in front of me. So these two main charts have gone through nearly 30 iterations. As I dialed in the probabilities. And personally, I ran nearly 20 team-specific seasons. Teams of, like, I ran the 72 Dolphins 4 or 5 times, could never get them to undefeated, but again, wasn't that concerned that I could only, I always be one loss and some ties, could never get the 0 losses. So yeah, it was, and again, it did develop over, in fits and starts over the course of 4 years, and really with most of the testing and development of this version happening this year.
Excellent. So, and it strikes me, we talk so often about getting kids into the game, even though we are, of a certain era. I love your font, by the way. There's a little bit of inline version of the font. What font is that?
Barbieri. Yeah, no, so, and this is something that it's important to me. And so I'm fortunate, I pay for the Adobe font subscription, and I found what was brilliant about this font. It's funny that we're talking about it. What's brilliant about the font is that there's like 8 different, there's an inline, the bold, the black, the thin, the regular, and it's like, it made for a perfect font for all the different layout I wanted to do. So yeah, Barbieri.
Nice. Yeah, you really do need that suitcase, that suite of all your weights. Are you a designer by trade? Because it's really well put together.
No, it's a hobby. I at this point in my life, do I wish I'd taken my career in that direction? Yeah, but no.
As someone who did take their career kind of direction, say, not so fast. Perhaps that's all right. So now I'm looking at, again, I want to go back to the word basis of this. 76 Eagles offense, dull, efficient, defense mild, meek. The Super Bowl winners, the Raiders. Let's go find Oakland. We're dynamic, secure, yet undisciplined on offense, staunch, meek, passive. Can you kind of correlate how the words equal numbers, if you will, like the stats of that season, a 13-1 Raiders team? How does that translate to dynamic, secure, undisciplined? And how does that kind of factor into the results and the engine?
Well, yeah, I mean, the first thing was figuring out from a statistical standpoint what season results that a team posts are indicative that embody that team. When you think about them, which are the teams that just pounded on the ground, ball control, and that's basically your efficient quality, or I'm sorry, dynamic quality. Prolific was easy. That was because most people are going to remember like the Greatest Show on Turf, teams like that just lit up the scoreboard. And so it was a matter of finding, scoring, total yards. This is all in the instructions, fumbles lost, interceptions made. What are all of the important stats that will have impact the final outcome of a game? And that's really what it was about. And I think that, and I went back and forth on different stats, and I'll be honest, because I knew I would be wanting to crank out seasons for myself. I didn't want to make it subjective. I really wanted to just go with objective numbers. And that is what separates a game like this from a game like Keith's. I just have to say that. Where Keith excels, where he's a savant, a football savant, is that he can take a season and subjectively give ratings to players that are not based on stats at all. He gets it. I can't do that. I have to rely on what's on a spreadsheet in front of me and just be objective. Okay, they were the top scoring team. They're going to get this rating. So it started with figuring out what numbers were going to drive the engine. And then it was the fun part. Then it was, I watch a lot of football. I have my favorite commentators, and the lexicon is just in my head naturally from reading books and watching videos and even talking to Keith. And so had to pull up a thesaurus a couple times to get some names, but otherwise it was using words that what I would hope, or what I hope what resonates with people are these words. These are words and phrases that you hear on the radio or on TV when you're listening or watching a game. That's the imagery I'm trying to invoke is hearing the broadcast. So yeah, so it's basically figure out the numbers and then just assign words to those ranges of numbers that are going to drive the engine.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that subjective, aspect of of adding that extra quantity, that intangible, indefinable kind of feel of a team. Because in APBA, of course, players are rated from 5 points best to 1 point least, and there's a lot of times he got a 4, he should be a 5, or vice versa. I mean, there's some formula all pros get a 5 usually, etc. Things like that. And I just wonder, you started with the 1960 season. You say you're going to go 60 to 1920. You're 2020 rather, going back a bit there. Do you kind of capture those flavors, like 60s, the AFL, the high flying, 70s, a little more kind of ground and pound, but opening up toward the end of the decade, the 80s, 3-4 defenses, the run and shoot 90s. Are you kind of incorporating decade strengths or characteristics within the game as well?
It's interesting. Fortunately, the NFL over the years, the core component to a fast playing game like this is the final score. And I don't know how the NFL did it, but from the 60s to today, it's basically the same. Statistically, you're seeing the same score ranges more or less, where the average points a team is going to score has stayed close enough to the center where all of these seasons work with one game engine. Where I did have to do some work. So let me answer your question first. I'm letting the gamer kind of fill in the blanks there with the narrative about what the game was like. Jason Graham, again, I have to just point to his videos. He is taking the results and in his mind's eye, telling us, the viewer of his videos, what is probably happening on the field. So a result that happens on his tabletop, the same exact line of text that could be happening in a 1960 game will sound and look different to him than if he was playing it in 1998. So to answer your question, I'm letting the game book is centered on it basically supports any decade. I'm hoping the 50s too, since it looks like I need to try to do some 50s team. And I let the qualities in the cards, pivot pivot the results in the right direction. And that's why I went ahead and did the extra ratings. If people want that detail, the game, because it's a little bit of a cheat. The game book will say TD pass, but then it'll have a parenthetical R after it, basically saying if this was a team that was a ground team, they scored many more rushing touchdowns than passing, just change that result to a touchdown run. It would be a much more complicated game book and game to produce if I had to change the results based on the specific type of football being played in a specific year. More ground game than air game when they started opening it up. So I actually didn't even have that in the initial version. It was a playtester recommendation. They said, Al, if you put this out there, people are going to want that detail because they're going to create. It's funny. It was so prophetic. It was like 2 years ago. Someone said, people are going to create finder charts for this, where they're going to want to know who scored the touchdown. And you're going to need to be more accurate with regards to it was a run or a pass. So that was thrown in there as well. But also where I did have to do some work, the place where, from an era perspective, the game has to account for changes is with turnovers, ball security. And actually I had some good arguments for the causes of this with my play testers over why are there so many less interceptions and fumbles today? Of course, we had it's the rules. It's the rules have changed to protect, the offense and increase scoring. And I'm like, how do we know that, quarterbacks haven't gotten more accurate, or that, and also because fumbles have gone down. Okay, there's no rules that prevent a fumble from happening. But, so ball security's gone up, a lot more fumbles in the old days, a lot more interceptions in the old days. So I did have to put in some, asterisks and special results to tweak that aspect of the game.
Interesting. Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you look like the kicking game, it was a lot more haphazard in the dead ball-ish era, up around to the mid to start the late 80s, where you start to see like efficiency became king. And, quarterback ratings are through the roof, yardage, obviously, all that good stuff. And obviously with players playing, having the training these days and the year-round contact with the game, just playing and teams are more efficient. It's tougher to find, which I guess kind of plays maybe into that whole parity thing, although Tom Brady is breaking any sort of parity paradigm there, I guess. So right now you've got 60, 66, 69, 72, 76, 81, 90, 95, 2001, 2010, 2020 sets. What made you choose that cohort to start with?
I wanted to make sure that there was a little bit of something for everybody before I put it out there. I knew I wasn't going to get all the favorite seasons, but at least people would have something from their favorite decade. That was the reason.
Okay. And you did touch on the 50s. Would you try to go back? Obviously, it's a bit more of a gray area, even though we always tout, the Professional Football Researchers Association going back to 1920. People love to try to do that, Canton Bulldogs or Akron or whatever. Would you go back? Because obviously 58 is, pivotal season. 1950, if you will, the first greatest show on turf, those early Rams teams, and that era, the end of the AAFC with the Niners, the Browns, the Rams coming in. Would you go back that bit, and is it hard, or is that harder to capture?
I don't think it. I guess I need to say I don't know. I haven't really looked at the numbers yet, but I've done a cursory glance. I think it should work. I honestly just was trying to be a little bit more realistic about the roadmap of work in front of me. But from a numbers perspective, unless there's something really crazy about turnovers in that era being different than the 60s, I think we should be good. It's just a matter of doing the work.
About how long does it take you to create a season?
It takes a few hours. Some of my friends are gonna be shaking their head that I haven't automated it yet, but I haven't, because I actually enjoy the process of pulling up the page on Pro Football Reference, looking at my guide for how I do it, and just I'm honestly, I just take the most recent season. By the way, probably the most time, and it sounds like you'll appreciate this, is getting the colors right,
Mm-hmm.
because damn teams, it's like they keep like tweaking their uniforms, but I want like a great example would be, say, the Jets. The Jets early on, you've got the Kelly green and the white and the card, and then they added black right around, I don't know, in the 90s somewhere. Anyway, so it's like little things like that I like to do with the cards to make sure, oh yeah, this is obviously, that era when they were, again, it's all about the color. It's about what it looks like on TV or in print. So once I get the colors right, then I go through and start just, getting the data on the cards filled in, and, it takes a few hours, and then there's proofing, which I missed a couple. So, but the community was right on it. And you noted that. Proof it. And at this point, the really cool thing is that given that I've already tested, so all those seasons that were with the initial release of the game were tested. So all the decades were tested by either Michael Owens, myself, Steve Tower, or earlier versions with my other testers. And I feel confident now that I don't need to test these seasons. I mean, because from a numbers perspective, the numbers aren't any different than any other season, and I know it'll work with the engine. So yeah, a few hours, 2 to 3 hours, and then I'm able to post it. It's not that bad, and I appreciate the people commenting, and it's actually kind of cool. I just come up into my office, I turn on some music, and I do that for a couple hours, and knowing that people are going to appreciate it makes it worth it.
For sure. And I appreciate that you appreciate that. One of the things about APBA football is that it takes maybe an hour and a half to 3 hours, but it's, savoring the game. It's like, why rush it? It's like, why be, doing this? Although fast play is great when you're not worried about personal statistics. And that's, something, obviously we just had all the, pro football, Pro Football Reference just added the PFRAs or PFRA led driven unofficial sack stats from 1960 and 1981. Obviously, a lot of folks want to not just replay the team, as you mentioned, but get the personal stats. What's your personal feeling on like trying to get Dickerson to his 2,000-yard season, or OJ, or Bruce Smith to 20 sacks, or the sack exchange, whatever?
Yeah, personally, it's never been like an important thing in my gaming. Those sort of season. When I play second season, boy, I'll tell you, I err on the side of not keeping stats. I keep the clock, and my favorite part of second season and my second season score sheets is I have a section there to note the results of each drive. To me, that's what I want to look at, is to if I want to look back, I want to see the ebb and flow of the game, exactly who scored the touchdowns, and trying to get season, get someone to outperform or perform like they did in a full season. Yeah, it's never something I've been into. Even when I play my baseball games, would I love to see a no-hitter or a cycle? Absolutely. So I do keep more, I fill out a score sheet, like filling out a baseball score sheet. That was like a rite of passage, and I still do it. I still love doing it today. But with football, no, I'm more of I've always thought about the game in more of a drive-by-drive fashion. I like looking at time of possession and things like that, but I'm less about the individuals. But since you mentioned that, I did at one point think that would be important, and wouldn't it be cool to incorporate a playmaker quality of some sort into this game? And again, in all honesty, that was going to be a lot of work. Like, there's been already a couple of comments in the forums when the Patriots lose, or when the current Bucs lose, someone will say, doesn't your game know Brady's the quarterback? And it was actually the genesis. So I'm most proud of the efficient quality in this game, which, is that little boost that teams that under or overperformed in real life based on their points for and points against, their Pythagorean win-loss. I leveraged that to do that, but it originally started with an idea. Could I give teams a little extra boost to have that superstar, and then even make a note of it on the card? But the amount of work, the extra work that it would take to do that, and the inevitable arguments or disappointments from gamers just wasn't worth the effort to me, because I am not, I can't profess to be an expert when it comes to individual impact, the impact of an individual player on the outcome of a game. So I didn't even want to try. It just wasn't worth it.
Interesting. And what about, obviously football, the snow, the rain games, the fog games? What's your take on, do you include, I don't think you do, but correct me if I'm wrong,
No,
is in a weather home field advantage, trying to kick a field goal at Heinz Field, depending on direction, the ice bowl, things like that. You don't, what's your take on?
I was thinking about this last night because Jason's comments about, stop tinkering got me thinking about, well, if I was going to tinker some more, what would I add? Thanks for the idea, Jason. And weather. I mean, weather immediately comes to mind, and home field advantage. So thanks to Bob Hansen for that. That was early on in testing. Bob's like, you need home field advantage. I did the research and I made it so that, you're going to get like a field goal advantage by playing at home, which I think is what I figured out in the research was about right, 3 to 4 points for the home team. And here's my out for the weather question. These stats are compiled based on results from good weather games and bad weather games that happened that season. So I can take the easy out and say, well, it's sort of factored in, in this homogenous view of the team. That said, I actually already have notes, and I was looking back at my notes. I'm like, I think I thought about this at one point. And absolutely, if we want to, gamify this even more and bring in some drama, some artificial drama, but drama nonetheless, we could absolutely have a pregame roll for weather. And if you get this result, if it's windy, just take 6 ticks off the kicker rating, something simple like that. Take 10%, reduce their efficiency by 15% or so, or maybe we could, and there's other things you could do that are very reminiscent of play again and their game day roles. So weather could actually have a possibly a positive impact, but I think typically we think of weather having that negative impact where there might be a chance that a regular offense that doesn't have the prolific rating, maybe they become semi-dull because of the snow, and it's gonna negate their kicking game. So it would be something like a passing team who's rated regular for offense becomes semi-dull because it nullifies their passing game. Whatever. So yes, I've thought about it, but I am taking Jason's advice for now, because there's plenty of time. This is 1 week into the game, and there's plenty of time down the road to add those kind of innovations to the game. I think I definitely want to let version. Now by the way, I love your background. The fact that I put version 1.0 on the page was both there's multiple reasons. One of them is sort of like a reminder to myself that it forces me not to tinker with the game book, because since I've put it out and people have started printing it, it's like it's out there, just let it sit, let it be, and the community will kind of help, I think, future direction of the game. I can sort of like keep track of what people want to see and would like and or not like, and just let it be. So besides weather though, and some sort of franchise module where you can go off the rails and and start with a real team but build a fictional universe, there really haven't been any other ideas. I think everything else is in the game. And I'll be honest with you, even for my games that I own that do have weather modules, I never use them. It bogs down. It's one more thing that you have to check or remember as you're playing the game, and that doesn't sit well with me. I just want to play the game and not have to remember an extra thing, because inevitably I always forget.
Sure, for sure. Yeah, and it's really questionable. I mean, if you think about, you always see the list, top 10 weather games, the 81 AFC championship. Did that cold really affect the Chargers that much? Or does the Heat particularly, Keith in second season has his weather chart by by season and region. So,
Yeah.
if you've got a northern team going to a southern team, is the southern team going to wear its home whites and try to, create some sort of fatigue in the other team? Is that going to really, in your analysis, I don't know if you've done that type of analysis.
I haven't. Instead, Jeff, what I've seen is I've read a ton of write-ups over the years. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of game write-ups. I don't recall any that were where people were like, "Oh my God, the weather, played such a big role in this game." I never see people talking about in their write-ups how the weather factors impacted the game, and you don't see people talking about that enough that I think it needs to be part of the narrative. So if I did something like that, it would definitely, I would want it to be something so cool, and something people remember. And I just don't see that happening with any of the other games. And I see most people not even using that. And I know that I don't, but you bring up a good point. And other people have brought it up too, is that this is a narrative game. It's not a numbers game. So why wouldn't you try to add that extra layer of drama? So it's definitely in the parking lot, so to speak, on the roadmap of the game.
For sure. You've got an oven with about 100 burners there with projects and levels of the project. But it's interesting, going back to Jason, we'd love to talk about Jason. In our interview, we talked about how because he coaches youth football and he's an athlete. You talk about the fan perception of the game versus the reality of how it's played. For instance, he noted that defenses are not, called to combat the run or combat the pass per se. They're more, in his words, that they are a formation set to counter a number of possibilities. And you wonder, you say like the 78 AFC championship, or 79 by date, but 78 season, where, the Oilers travel to Pittsburgh and it's a 34-5 intense rain game versus that, Eagles go to Chicago, I think in the 80s, and they had the fog game. There's really not much impact there, but, trying to add too much to the game from a fan perspective versus, the actual insider's view of what the game really is interesting. I wonder, how do you kind of rate your game in terms of realism and really capturing the flavor of what the field, what's happening in the guts of the game of football?
I think I'd rate it at the same as any other card and dice tabletop game, in that it's, well, yeah, I'd rate it the same, because it's down to our imagination. I don't know, it's like whether it's something from another company, Downey, Inside Sports, and I'm drawing a blank on all the other teams that produce statistically based football games. But the point is, they all require an investment from the game player to sort of like suspend disbelief, get your tunnel vision on, immerse yourself in what may be happening. And while I do, I'm happy with the way the game turned out, and I still, even reading the same lines over and over and over, I feel they do help evoke a certain image. At the end of the day, it is going to just boil down to people memorizing these roles. They're going to memorize the results, especially like, folks probably already know 1-3-5 is going to be a turnover. So from that perspective, I think it's almost, once you've played a game long enough, again, if you burn out, it's going to be because, it's an imagination burnout more than anything else. But that's kind of how I view it in terms of that.
Interesting. Great. Speaking for yourself, personal sports heroes, personal football heroes, the moments that really stood out to you and really captured your attention in the game. For me, the Steelers, seeing the Steelers logo in Super Bowl IX, it's like, oh my God, that's just weird stuff like that. What are your kind of those moments or football players ingrained in your memory?
Yeah. So for me, I got to take you through my geography of moving around the country. I was born in Massachusetts, so my first memories are of having this Patriots football, white football with red stripes, and what's his name? What's his name? The Patriots guy.
I think Pat Patriot. I think
Pat Patriot. Yes, and Pat Patriot on the football. So I think they were probably my first team, and the Redskins for some reason, just because I think someone had bought me a Redskins shirt for no reason, just random. But shortly thereafter, moved to Philadelphia. So I grew up northeast Philly and suburbs, and was an Eagles fan. So my first memories really is going to my friend's house every Sunday growing up in Philadelphia, because they had a big projection TV, and we watched the Eagles games. So Jaworski and Montgomery and all those, and the 1980 Super Bowl. I've got my vintage, Jaworski helmet there. And for years and years and years, just an Eagles fan, but boy, watching the games on TV, for either watching them at the Vet or on TV from Veterans Stadium, God, just not a good experience. I mean, just that ugly AstroTurf and a bland shade of green, and just, but it got me hooked on the game. But at the same time that I was an Eagles fan, again, we talked about graphics and design. I started becoming a Chargers fan. You asked me why? Wow, because of Fouts? No, Joyner, Winslow, Muncie? Nope. The helmet.
Exactly.
It was the helmet. It was this helmet.
That's right.
And so, as fortune would have it, I finished college in Pittsburgh, and I did become a Steelers fan while I was out there, much to the chagrin of all my friends in Philly. But moved to San Diego. My parents had sold their house in Pennsylvania while I was in college, moved to San Diego. So I moved to San Diego in 90, raised a couple kids, got married, got divorced, got remarried, spent 30 years in San Diego. So those are probably where my solid football memories come from, watching the Super Bowl where the 49ers just broke our hearts in 94 with my dad, just a few years before he passed away. He had decorated his house with all the Chargers logos and everything. And so that was a heartbreaking year. But my heroes today, because I lived in Arizona for a few years and I went to Pitt. So Larry Fitzgerald is my number one all-time favorite football player. His talent, his ability to take a hit and get right up. The guy's just made of rubber, and his impact in the community. So it's like you take all those things, and Larry Fitzgerald just turns out is absolutely my number one. And then, but as far as like favorite players, I mean, Dan Fouts will always be my favorite quarterback. LaDainian Tomlinson, I got to see him play live. I won't forget any of his record-breaking season. Breaks my heart. He never got a Super Bowl ring, but he's my favorite running back. And so those are probably the big three. And Junior Seau. I lived just a few miles from Junior Seau when I lived in Oceanside, in the San Diego area. So his impact in the community was huge. So most of my go-to idols are going to be either from the seasons I remember as a kid. I remember, like you talk about the game in Miami in 1981. I think it was 1981. The
double overtime,
being carried off. I remember my memory sucks, but I remember where I was when I watched that game. My dad let me, watch it with him in their master bedroom, and we're watching on that little color TV at the end of the room. And he let me stay up late, and finish that overtime game. So, memories of the Chargers, memories of watching all Larry Fitzgerald games when I was in Arizona. So now I'm in North Carolina though. So now I've sort of lost. So I was a San Diegan for 30 years. When they moved to LA, my wife was really emotional about it. She's like, yeah, she donated all of her Chargers shirts and just got rid of them. I've still got mine because there's some expensive jerseys and they look cool. So I'm not getting rid of my Chargers jerseys, but so, I guess I'm going to try to invest in the Panthers a bit while I'm here. I am not. So I know a lot of the listeners are very much passionate about that one team, and you got to stay with that one team your whole life. Again, as I said at the beginning of the interview, I'm an NFL fan. I won't jump on a bandwagon. I'll usually try to stay regional. So, right now it's like Panthers and Steelers are my team now. And I say Steelers just because it's funny. It's like we're in a blackout region in here in North Carolina for Pittsburgh. It's really weird. So I guess they're in my region. But yeah, that's those are my players.
Interesting. Nice. And I imagine you've got to have at least one or two of those powder blue Charger.
Oh,
Beautiful.
I've got multiple. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's you bring up. Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my second question. What was your take on the move or the Vegas Raiders, things like that? So much of the sport is really about legacy and history, and that memory and that connection. So that's makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
That it's a little distressing when those big shifts happen. Or you think back to Irsay and the Colts and that midnight move. But well, thank you, sir. I mean, I think that covered a lot of the ground that I was hoping to cover. I think that provided some insights into people into your thinking about the game of football actual and your game fast drive football. Congratulations on all this success. And I know you're going to be a busy man going forward here. So thank you for your time, and thank you for creating this game. It's clearly proving very, very intriguing to people and providing a lot of fun already.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm thrilled with the reception. And just to add there, for me, the meta game here is the community. The interaction with the community is as much fun for me as playing the game. So when people ask, it's like when people try to when people ask, is it, how much time are you spending on this? It's like, it doesn't feel like I'm spending time on it. It's enjoyable. It's a nice distraction during the workday when I can check my phone and answer a question. And it, breaks the monotony of the workday, and it gives me something to look forward to when I have free time. So yeah, the meta game of supporting the community is a lot of fun. So I appreciate you. I appreciate the rest of the community that's been saying nice things.
Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time, and be well.
All right. Thank you.